when I wrote the very first survival manual. It's no longer available, called Blueprint for Survival. It was my conclusion that basically the most overlooked and most important single device anyone can acquire is a night vision device. Not only just because of the bad guys that are coming in the night, but also depending on the quality. There's a lot of weird stuff you can see, spooky stuff at a distance you can see, in the night skies, and also with the right thermal units, they're not the same thing. And I'll have Bob explain the difference, but I will say this, and I say this to everybody. I went through the phase where I was collecting single action army revolvers, Colts with, and nicely engraved and stuff. I looked at it one day, and this is true, and I said, what good is it? Number one, it's 6 shots, and number two, the guy that trained me, he was the fastest shot in the world, and he's dead now, Bob Munden, but 6 shots and a fancy revolver. Then I said, look at all the collector's things. And everybody used to collect guns because there was a time, Bob, you can buy them 1 year and 10 years later, they're worth a whole lot of money more. So it was a good investment. But when you look at all the safe guns that you have to keep in your safe to keep the guns safe, yet the guns are what keeps you safe, without night visions, I believe this, it's an empty argument. Number one, I think it's foolish. I would say this, and I believe, a good handgun, backup handgun, and I, the stuff I believe in. And the bottom line is as a good battle rifle, one you're familiar with, and a long range rifle. And sometimes you can get a battle rifle that's good enough that the average guy at 800 yards is a good shot, So, but you can't have 50 guns in a red flyer wagon running for your life and hoping the bad guys don't get your guns. I think it's hideous that people do not understand the armament of the gangs that have been subjugated by the DHS, ATF, and others. There are people in the government that have already made deals with the gangs, so they're very well armed. Yet I would say this: the only advantage that I can see that's still left open to the American citizens, night vision. Would you concur with that? And not just because you sell it.
Yeah. Steve, again, you're absolutely right. And Long Beach was a very great thing that Donald Trump did, because that's where a lot of the human trafficking, the fentanyl, and you just think of the fentanyl that just has killed 70,000 men of military age. Okay, so, they're bringing fentanyl in, and that's what they're bringing weapons in. When you say weapons, and we're talking about some indirect fire weapons also, mortars, mines, rocket-propelled grenades. These aren't just, fully automatic AK-47s. These are hand grenades and things that these gangs are getting. So you need to be able to counter that. There's a book I really enjoy. It's by a guy named Samuel Culpers called SHTF Intelligence. He runs a website called Forward Observer. He has 2 questions here. What advantages can we create for ourselves over our adversaries? And then, what adaptations can we make to our surroundings that will help us survive? Well, what do we do to help us over our adversaries? With people that are better armed than us. Well, night vision would definitely be one of those things. Tactics would be one of those things. If you have safe queens, and when Steve says safe queens, those are guns you put in the safe because they're nice and pretty and you don't want to get them dinged up. They're not going to do you any good. If you're not out practicing training, going to the range once a week or once a month and using those, you might as well not buy them. If you buy radios, and I sell radios, if you buy them and just stick them in your safe, learning how to use ham radio is a learning curve. You have to do it. So the time of just buying stuff is over. We really have to start to take this seriously, because we look at our enemies. They are definitely taking it seriously. So again, night vision gives me that ability to operate 12 hours when most people cannot operate. It's that thing that night vision does more than just being able to see at night. If somebody comes against you with night vision and you're in your house in a fixed target, your lights are on, the first thing they're going to do is take your lights out. Second thing they're going to do is terrorize you a little bit. At that point, you can't see out the door. They're going to think the boogeyman is out. You're going to think the boogeyman's out there all night long. That guy can go away for 2 or 3 hours and sleep and eat and do whatever he wants, come back in 3 or 4 more hours and do it again. It breaks your sleep up so that you cannot sleep. And after 2 or 3 days of that, you're going to start to make some critical errors. So people with night vision have this extreme advantage over those without it.
Let's talk, Bob, too, about just the basics of shortwave reception, okay? A shortwave radio, and you know, I mean, just to put this into perspective, there are guys who can spend thousands, but you've got them for $120, and that's the only way. I know of no other way, unless you do. When everything else is done, there are still places on the globe that will be broadcasting shortwave. And I maintain this. Next to water and food, information, because we're all in the information age, we will all go through a psychological, if you will, withdrawal. And that's the only thing that I know of. Am I wrong, or is there something else?
You're absolutely right. In intelligence community, they actually call it conflict currency. That's what information is, conflict currency. The more information you have, the wealthier you are. So if you are in your home and you have mountains of food and you have, you know, great water filters and thousands of gallons of water and diesel fuel and everything, and you can't or don't know what is coming down the street, it's not going to do you any good. And that's the misnomer I want to dispel. You know, we're not going to sit there and survive the apocalypse in our recliners watching reruns of Jeopardy with our solar power and doing that. It is going to be a dynamic environment that you're going to have to come and protect each other. You're going to have to stand together. And if we can't do that, then we're going to be woefully lacking when that day comes, because the other side is preparing. And I want to say this, that, you know, you look at what the media presents as our opposition, and, you know, the pink-haired little soy boys. That is propaganda. That is out there just for our consumption, so that we think, oh, my gosh, look at that guy. If I blew at him, he'd fall down. That is to make us overconfident. Hubris is our enemy. And so what we'll be facing is, you look at these people in Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and all these other leftist groups that have battle training. Right now, ISIS members are being rotated in and out of conflicts in the Middle East, so they get actual hard combat training, and then they're being cycled back into Western Europe and the United States. So that's the type of people we're facing. The media is 100% on their side. Money, banking is 100% on their side. Corporations are 100% on their side. So it's not going to be this little, you know, pink-haired little boys running around thinking that somehow they can defeat us. You're coming against an enemy that is hardened and determined. And first and foremost, you know, God is the one who gives us protection. Psalm 91, He will cover me, He will hide me, He will protect me. And that's what we need to be. And second of all, just as I said in that first half an hour, Noah and Joseph both took dramatic action to fulfill the vision God gave them. They just didn't sit around and say, God's going to trust me, or Noah didn't sit around, where's the driftwood at? I'll hold on to that when the flood comes.